if you have investors, you can't pitch an idea or have a pitch deck or anything like that off of just the appreciation, right? It's cash flow. What is your return on investment? If you're investing, let's call it $100,000, what are you going to get back? You can't say, I'm going to, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Investors, $100,000 we need for this project, but it's going to make in, $1 million in 3 years.
You've been wondering what your strategy should be in going into 2023 when investing in cash flow. Well, today we're going to help answer that question. I've got Mr. Anthony Lawson. Anthony, how are you, sir?
Doing pretty good, Oliver. Thank you for the introduction. Appreciate
it. Absolutely. Listen, so I want people to know a little bit about you and what's going to qualify you to kind of give them this advice. I know what that is, but I need them to know what that is from you.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Anthony Lawson. For all the viewers that don't know me, I'm primarily born and raised in Newark, New Jersey. Started venturing out, started real estate investing about 7 years ago. Started off doing a lot of shared living accommodation. Such as group homes, sober living facilities, and now we're doing a bunch of different kind of asset types in commercial real estate specifically. And we branched over to the Midwest in Cleveland, Ohio, Detroit, Michigan, and now we're expanding to some more markets as well across the country. And I also have a construction company I'm a co-owner, a part of, licensed and insured in New Jersey and in Cleveland, Ohio as well too. So we do a lot of construction projects, and I'm also a fund manager. Oh, I think can't really hear you, Oliver. I think the sound went out.
All right, that better?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I can hear you now.
Jesus Christ. This is what happens when you produce your own show and you hit too many buttons at the same time, ladies and gentlemen. I apologize. All right. All right, Anthony. So multifaceted to say the least. Let's just hop right in. Let's talk about where we're at right now, and then we'll get into the strategy for 2023. So where do you see us in the market as we speak in 2022?
Yeah, so the market for 2022 is very interesting, right? You had a lot of hype with sellers. Quote unquote, meaning like the sellers you could throw anything on the market, it would sell itself, right? Realtors rarely have to really work or anything like that. Now in 2023 is a different time, right? Interest rates in 2022, earlier in the beginning of the year, was around 2.3, somewhere around there. I actually had a friend that got down to it was a little bit lower than that, like closer to like 1.9, which is like extremely low throughout the history of loans. So it was a little bit different, right? And towards the back end of it, we're catching the back end of it because we're going into 2023, where now the Feds raise the rates, right?
Right.
So with that becomes a different outlook on how you have to invest. Because if you were investing strictly because you thought you can get some good appreciation, it can sit there, you have to reevaluate that, because as interest rate rise, your mortgage payment rises.
Right.
So as 2022, you can possibly do a fix and flip, let it be on the market. It can probably sell itself. You probably have, numerous amount of bids going on between it hit the market because of scarcity, right? The scarcity of the market with short supply and demand, put something on the market, it sells itself. Now you're seeing a little dip in the market, meaning like certain parts of the country, homes are sitting on the market a little bit longer. I'm seeing commercial real estate, depending on what asset type it is, you have to really do something to sell it, meaning like some type of improvement or value add or even a deep discount if you are the seller. So it's a little bit different, interesting to see going to 2023 and, further.
That's a good point. So here's my question. How does this, with the commercial side of things, how does that connect to the residential? Is there a reflection of one to the other when the market starts to shift?
So that's a good question. I won't say it's a reflection of one or the other because they're two separate types of asset classes, right? Residential is based on that comparable sales, right? So whatever is selling in the market, if homes tend to sit in the market and don't sell as high as they used to, then unfortunately, if you thought you were doing a fix and flip or anything like of that nature, or maybe you're just a regular homeowner and you were selling, the home sit there a little bit longer, and whatever even 1 mile, that's what it's going to sell for. The beauty of commercial real estate is that commercial real estate will sell based off the value add opportunity, right? So if you're adding some type of cash flow to it, it can definitely sell. But, if you have, maybe the interest rates are going up some, or maybe, you're investing in residential real estate, right? Where the economy is getting a little bit tighter, such as multifamily, 30, 40 units, yes, it's a lot under one roof, but as the economy economy tightens up, inflation rises, people start to cut back, right? So where do they want to go? They may want to actually store stuff. They want to move out. They may want to just get into a single family home with more space. So it's just interesting, how both asset types can kind of be parallel, but still kind of help each other out depending on which asset type that you are investing in.
Got it. Okay. So then let me ask you this then. As an
Yep.
investor, and we'll do two scenarios here. As an investor
Yep.
who has been in the game for a little bit, let's say you've got at least 10 properties more in the portfolio. What's your advice to that person right now as we move into the 2023 timeframe?
So my advice would be, I would say still continue doing what you're doing. Still finding properties below market value. If you're doing commercial real estate, maybe you can do some type of repositioning from one usage to another. And I would say it just really depends on what asset type it is, right? Because if you, let's see, you've had, I don't know, 11 single family homes. It is institutional investors going after that, but they're buying them in portfolios, which the cash flow can be, extremely significant if it's a portfolio. But maybe you're just a one-off investor, maybe you can purchase them one at a time. That's okay too, but you have to understand as the economy shifts, maybe you have to do something a little bit different. Maybe you can create a residential assisted living facility out of these properties to add more cash flow in a business component. Maybe you have to do a group home or some type of sober living facility out of them to enhance the cash flow, because as economy tightens up, people, get more layoffs, start to happen and things of that nature, and you don't want to just rely on one tenant.
Right. Okay. Now, if you are brand new to the game, and we all know how this goes, brand newbie coming in, wants to buy some property, but they're nervous going into the current market as wild as it is. What's your advice to somebody who's just starting out?
Oh, that is a very good question. So Oliver, man, for me, I will always say get a mentor. Right? Get a mentor that has been there, done that, and learn what they know so you can avoid the costly mistakes. And hopefully it don't cost you anything, because you're avoiding those mistakes.
Right.
You don't want to, get into that. But I always say too, find out and hone down on what kind of asset type that you want to focus on, because it's a plethora of different things you can do in real estate, not just commercial real estate specifically, but even from residential. You could do a lot of different things from fix and flips. You could be a regular landlord. You could buy 2 to 4 units. You could buy single family homes. So I would say focus on what you want to do, and reverse engineer your goals. If you're starting off and you say, within the next 2 years or next year, I want 5 properties. Okay, what does that look like? Maybe you want 10 units, but maybe you can just buy one apartment building that's 10 units. So then whoever is in that asset type, how can you add value to them to make it a win-win situation? Then from there, you start to learn and then on them. And don't be afraid to invest in yourself. I will always tell people that, because it's just like college. When you go to college, you got to pay for your books and your tuition, right? So you have to do the same. You got to invest in yourself, no matter if someone has a mentor program or apprenticeship program where you have to provide some type of sweat equity. When you have to learn from the ground, you have to go there. You have to go to Home Depot for that person if it's a development, if you want to, jump straight off into development or something like that. So it just really depends on what you want to focus on. It's seeking out that mentor that's already done it, and then providing their, those expertise services that they can provide for you, so you won't have to, fall into the pitfalls.
Now, speaking of mentors, I know you have one who's been very significant to you. And one thing that I've heard him say, and I've even heard you say this, is always invest for cash flow. Explain the thought process of why you should always invest for cash flow for me.
Yes. That's a very good question, man, because I think a lot of people, especially in pricey markets, right? Relatively speaking, if you're in California, New Jersey, depending on where you're at in New Jersey, I want to say specifically northern New Jersey, close to New York, or even New York itself, is a very high appreciating market. I'm sure it's more throughout the country, like Seattle, Washington is another one. It's a very good appreciating market. But you don't want to rely on that, because throughout these times, you can't pay your bills with appreciation. That's number one.
That's a fact.
Number two, yes, sir. Number two is, if you have investors, you can't pitch an idea or have a pitch deck or anything like that off of just the appreciation, right? It's cash flow. What is your return on investment? If you're investing, let's call it $100,000, what are you going to get back? You can't say, I'm going to, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Investors, $100,000 we need for this project, but it's going to make in, $1 million in 3 years, but no cash flow. Like, that's going to be very difficult, not saying things can't be done, but in cash flow, that's how you survive, right? Like, you go to a job, you got a W-2, you get some type of money back every 2 weeks, or if it's a weekly job, you get some type of money back. So cash flow is everything. That's actually king, if you ask me.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So you're investing for cash flow. It's funny,
Yeah.
man, because you hear it. We always hear that constantly, right? Invest for cash flow and not appreciation. But when you break it down like that,
Yep.
hey, Mr. and Mrs. Investor, I'd like to talk to you about opportunity. And would you believe it's 100% appreciation over the next 17 years? They'd be like, oh, okay, cool, but my pockets need appreciation now. Right. So I know in the multifamily world, it's much easier to say, hey, this is going to be the return on your money when you invest. But if I say this is going to be the appreciation on your money, it's a whole different thought process. And don't get me wrong, I know there's people who out there who do it. I just agree with you 100% that it should always be putting that money in for cash flow. Now,
yes, absolutely.
Now with what you do, you do a lot with funds and all that great stuff. So how does the cash flow investing work for you when you're dealing with the fund? Is that a different process than normal?
No, that's a good question too. I would say it's the same process essentially, because you're paying someone depending on how you set it up, right? It's two ways you can set up a fund, right? You have, well, I would say three ways. You got a syndication, which is usually just a one-off project. Usually we call it apartment building. Usually someone invests in an apartment building, they give some type of interest rate on top of the equity split, simple syndication. Then you have a debt fund, right? Which is what I have. That fund, it pays a fixed interest rate. Then you can say quarterly, semi-annually, annually, whatever you want to say. And then you have a private equity fund, right? Hence the name equity. You have a little bit of equity coming in, and you do the splits in your private placement memorandum called the PPM. Just letting people know if you come into this fund, this private equity fund, this is what you're going to get back in exchange for these good deals. So that's the ultimate the three ways. But you're investing in cash flow because you're investing in a syndicator or a fund manager that's been doing it, right? They have a track record. They have knowledge in the marketplace. They know how to find good deals. They have the relationships, right? Whether that's be relationships with brokers or even mortgage brokers or even just regular straight lenders, without the mortgage brokers. So they have those relationships created, and they know how to put the whole thing together. And then you get, your interest rate, and you get your equity split. So then it's passive income at that point because you're not an active investor. So even in these times right now, that'll still be probably even better for you because you don't have to, I don't know what I'm going to do in the marketplace. It's kind of scared. Such and such told me not to invest right now because they think the housing market's going to crash. You have people that's already been through, multiple cycles. If they haven't been through a cycle, best and believe they have mentors that have been through multiple cycles, so they know which asset class to actually invest in.
Okay. Now that's twice you've mentioned the mentor thing, which tells me, as my very intelligent military mind, that if somebody says it twice, that means it's important. So with that being the case, how do you find that mentor? What's your advice as people when they're looking for that mentor? Even those who have already been investing, you could always use a mentor. How do they find that mentor?
Yes, absolutely. So I would say just like anything, right? Let's even talk about outside of real estate, right? If you have a fitness goal, where do you go, right? You seek out a personal trainer that you can relate to, that you can see yourself looking like them, right? Like, they lost 100 pounds. I know I can do it too. They told me to eat. This is what I have to do. So real estate is no difference, right? If you go to a real estate meetup, if you have some type of podcast on your phone that you can listen to, usually at the end of it, they say you can reach me at this email, my team email, my website. Connect with that person, right? But get more clarity on your goals and knowing what you want to achieve, because sometimes you want to walk in there knowing what you already have to do, right? Like if you tell somebody, okay, I want to invest in apartment buildings, this is what I'm looking for, this is how I can add value to you. It seems like you already been doing your homework, you've been studying, you just need that extra help or that lending hand to get you where where you're trying to go. So it's mentorships all around. It can be your parent that you learn something from. If it's fitness, it can be a personal trainer. Real estate is no different. You go to meetups, you will attend all these different networking events, even masterminds, right? If you have extra funds put it to the side, I encourage anyone to join a mastermind. It do cost to get in, but once you get in there, that's people of high net worth caliber that's actually been in the industry for a while. And then you can learn from them. And I'm sure, when people see that, they was there at one point in time, they remember how I feel to start. Sometimes certain people, you'll be surprised, it may not even cost you much except for your time, right? Time is everything.
Right.
But how valuable is your time if you are learning from someone that's already been there, from 10, 20, 30 years of knowledge?
So then really investing for cash flow isn't just about money. It can also be about the time that you're spending in, the time that you're putting in to find that
Yep.
mentor. Because at some point that money comes back to you, that work, that effort comes back to you on the back end. Interesting.
Absolutely.
All right. So what is going to be the first thing that person says to that person though? When you reach out to somebody like a mentor, or even, let's do mentor for now. You reach out to a mentor. What's that conversation supposed to be like? How do you find the way to bring them value? Because we say that a lot, but it's rarely explained on how you're looking at that.
That's a good question. So I'll give you like an example, right? So if you know you want to do an apartment buildings, let's say I'm just starting out.
Right.
I'm just starting out, brand new. And I found, I don't know, Joe Schmo. And I seen all these interviews of Joe Schmo was doing. I seen that they were in the military. I was in the military. And it's something to the effect I can connect with them, right? It's a mutual interest. Then from there, you can approach that person or that person's team, letting them know all of the great accomplishments that they accomplish. Always greet them on their accomplishments first. I always say that. I'm a firm believer in that. Then from there, you can see how you align with them, and then think about it. Someone that has multifamily, right? And you have been good at finding the deals. How can you add value to them? You found deals. Right. So if that person is saying in the interviews, because you study them, you listen to multiple podcasts, multiple shows they've been on. If they're telling you, oh yeah, I do 50 plus apartment deals, 50 plus units in apartments. Contact me at X, Y, and Z if you find them in, I don't know, the Midwest. Now you go look for the Midwest. You've been studying, mind you. You went into the room with knowing your intention of, I'm going to add value to this person. Right. I'm going to learn how to find and analyze deals. Then from there, you analyze it. You found it. You can bring it to them. So now guess what that's called? Sweat equity, right? You're actually learning, and that person may even be willing to bring you in on a deal because you found such a great deal. Right. So that's how you add value to people, whether that be through money, whether that be through time, whether that be through, anything else. Adding value to a person is essentially anything that they don't have that you can offer, right? Timing is everything with people, especially with really, really wealthy people.
Right.
They don't have so much time as they used to, right? They're doing a lot of other things. So if you can add the time factor back to them by taking something off their plate, then it's a win-win situation.
I'd like to reiterate the fact that you said on two parts, as a matter of fact, on the time piece. I have, up to the point where I started real estate investing and I actually started trying my best to understand what's happening and trying to develop myself, I found that time, man, like, it's tough because you always hear somebody say, I don't have enough time, or time has gotten away, or I don't know where the day went. It's because the time management is off. So when you see somebody who's on a high level, like you said a little bit earlier, you got construction going on, you've got the fund happening, you're doing other real estate investing. I'm sure you're mentoring other people, you're in masterminds. Your time goes from here to here, right? So having the ability to just bring somebody something, I can tell you, I've got buddies who've told me, who are in real estate investing and much bigger than I am. They said, listen, the best way somebody can approach me is saying, hey, I got a deal I've already underwritten. I'd like you to partner with me, and bring it straight to them. That automatically sets off a relationship. And in addition to that, you talked a little bit about just the thought process behind that, right? So understanding bringing them value isn't always just, hey, I'm money, right? Sometimes, like you said, it's giving the time back, but as well as actually sometimes some people just want to be listened to. Like, hey, listen, this is what I'm trying to do. I want to understand how you did what you're doing, and you just listen. Right. And then you start developing the relationship from there. Now, it is a much, much longer process. Don't get me wrong, because somebody's not going to be willing to give you something brand new, free, and they've got this program. Hey, go check this program out. But at the same time, if you go and buy the program or buy their book and reach out to them and say, hey, I read your book, I had questions on this, this, and this, they are honored, one, flattered, two, and impressed because you actually reached out and said, hey, I've got a question on whatever it is. Because in every book, and just like you said on the podcast as well, they ask you to reach out. Talk to them. Anyway,
absolutely.
That's my I'm getting off my high horse now. All right, so so with that said, Anthony, with you and how you found your mentor and the work that you've done, shout out to Sharif and Ashley as well, the team out there helping out. With that said, how did you go about reaching out to him and getting to work with Sharif, and how'd that happen? Because I know that's been epic for you, shall we say?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's the words that he lays upon. It doesn't matter if you've been invested for 10, 15 years or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the knowledge that comes behind it, right? And I'm always a student to it. No matter if I'm in it for 30 years, you can always learn something from someone else. So from there, that process was essentially like we just talked about, right? I literally studied what he was doing. I gravitated to an asset type he was mentioning. I said I always wanted to learn that. I paid for the mentorship, right? The course.
Mm-hmm.
Then from there, you can sort of get access to the team, right?
Right.
Then from there, I kept in touch over time, and I said, okay, I see he does something else in this sector. I'm going to pay for that too. And then from there, I always wanted to, start up a fund. Didn't know which way to go. I have my business model. I have my own unit counts and all the stuff I've been doing for a few years. And I said, you know what, this would be a perfect opportunity. Then from there, he helped me start up my own fund, and now we're doing joint ventures together. So it's just a beautiful thing how you can keep in touch with someone, pay for their course, their mentorship, believe in them. I read his book, different things like that. Told him his book was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And then, just from there, just following up, and they see how dedicated you are, especially if you're younger, and they see that you're serious because they remember when they was starting off in that, same age, how difficult it was. And they just want to shed some light on you. So I will always tell that to anyone, someone has some type of mentorship or anything like that, pay for it, go for it.
I wish I had a hell yeah button. I need to write that down. I need a hell yeah button. Where's my pen at? Anyway, I definitely need I need to get that in here.
Yeah.
But yes, so I got excited because of what you said. One.
Yeah.
Two, there's another part in there that I think is key that we should go back to. You said that
Mm-hmm.
there was one particular asset that you gravitated towards. Now, as we said, you invest for cash flow constantly.
Yep.
How did you decide what that asset was going to be? What drove you, and how did you narrow that down?
That's a good question. So the way I invest right now, right, I love assisted living facilities, different type of business models, group homes, things of that nature.
Okay.
But it definitely requires staff, right? Definitely good cash flow. I'm helping the community in different ways, but I want something to where I'm diversifying with not, a lot of effort.
Right.
Even though yes, you can systematize with assisted livings and different things like that, but I still have staff and I'm still, the owner. But if I'm having something like a single tenant net lease property
Mm-hmm.
where you have, the McDonald's or Wendy's or something like that, they give you a 10, 15, 20-year lease. You don't do anything else. You just buy the building and then they pay you. So it's no employees, there's no nothing. So I always looked into those asset types, and I said, man, I didn't find anyone that was actually doing them on a scale that he's doing them. So I
Right.
said, I actually want to learn, and I'm all in. I'm just pay for it.
Okay. Nice. Nice. So
Yeah.
at that time, because you were in the military at one point, right?
Yes, I was. Yep.
Now, were you still in when this was happening?
That is a good question. So when I first started, I was actually out of the military when I first started. I was about 3, 4 months out. Three,
Okay.
4 months out because I was about 3, 4 months out. And then from there, I actually closed on my first property. It was a shared living combination property, and I got that property. It was just a giant single family, 6 bed, 2 bath, and I actually was in the National Guard. People didn't know, so I was in the National Guard for some years, and then I was doing some law enforcement on the side as well, full time. And then from there, I utilized the FHA product, and I took the basement and I started sharing out the bedrooms. And then from there, I really loved that business model and how I was helping the community, and I just started doing it on a larger level. But from there, yeah, man, I was getting out of the military. Yeah.
Okay. So you're getting out the military and you jumped into this. Now, how long was that? What do I call it? I like to call it the fear window, right? That window where you're like really
Okay.
uncomfortable. You're like, I don't know if I want to do this. I'm gonna mess around and go broke, right? How, how long was that period for you, and how did you find your way out of that?
Oh, that is a good question. That's a good question. So the fear window, I didn't have. I'm not trying to say it like that, but I didn't have really a fair window of getting out of there. It
Okay.
was a it was a it was a new thing for me for sure because I was like, you know what, I'm just all in. But it was a little bit different for me because I utilized a strategy called wholesaling. And what wholesaling is, when nobody doesn't know, if you're doing residential, you're just simply finding a property at a deep discounted price, and you're assigning over to an investor to buy it at for fee.
Right.
So, my first check was around when I closed that property and I seen 20,000. I was just like, wow, this is real. So from there, so from there, I'm like, that's the most I ever had in one time.
Right.
And I just kept doing it, on simultaneously while I was buying property. So I was just always remembering, like, put something to the side for taxes for myself, but to reinvest.
Right.
So from there, I started figuring out creatively how to acquire more properties. I started doing like, after I bought that first one, that next one actually was a lease. And I told the landlord my business model and dropped some walls, Airbnb the basement, and I was like quadrupling the amount of rent that he wanted. And then from there, he seen it, and it didn't last long because he wanted to try to do it himself. But
Of course.
I made a nice chunk of cash, so I reinvested it and actually bought another property, a creative strategy on a JV. And then from there, I just started scaling and doing larger ones. If I was like, if I can do this out of a giant single family, if I have a commercial building with 30, 40, 50 rooms, that's a nice, cash flow coming in. So and I just kept doing it all simultaneously while I was wholesaling.
Right. What's funny is I tell people, anybody who asks me and says, "Hey, how do I get started?" My first
Yep.
bit of advice to them is two things. Take your time to figure out what the things are that are out there that you can go to and start wholesaling.
Yep.
And they're always like, "Well, why
Absolutely.
wholesaling?" I feel like, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Wholesaling, I feel like, gives you the baseline of everything when it comes to multifamily, commercial, single, residential, 2 units, 3 units, 29 storage facilities. It gives you the baseline of real estate investing because you have to understand, okay, this is how much it would cost. This is the ARV. This is what some of the repairs look like. Hey, this area, it's doing great with these houses. I need to leave that alone. Well, if you're investing in A-class properties, now that's where you want to go to get luxury properties, right? So I'd love to hear just your thoughts on how do you feel as far as wholesaling? How did it give you any foundation? What was your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't do so much of it today as I used to.
Facts.
Business model is a little bit different, but I always tell people, man, it was the foundation for me.
Right.
I learned the art of finding the deal, and I always was a firm believer. And from what I heard other people when I first started, that person, he or she who finds the deal can win because you can structure creatively with an investor that want to bring you in on the JV opportunity. You can assign it. You can do all these different creative strategies because you found a good deal. And good deals is everything. The person can have all the money in the world, but if they don't know how to find a good deal, I mean, you're not going to get far in real estate. So for me, wholesaling is just, just the eye opener for me. Like, wow, not only from a check factor, like, oh yeah, the money is good, but it was just, I know how to find a deal. And if I can do that, to your point, on a single family,
Right.
I can do that with just learning a little bit of skills that was a little bit different on a 20 plus unit apartment building, or I can do that on a self storage deal, assisted living facility. Just knowing what to look out for, and then finding them and analyzing them.
I couldn't have said it better myself, even though I did try. Well done. So, all right, let me ask you this, Anthony, and this is something that's I'm really curious about with you doing what you've done up to this point, because you started wholesaling, then you got the assisted living facility, or not assisted living, but the living facility that you worked on, and you just started growing from there. With each one of those steps, how did you know when to make that transition? How did you know when to pivot, or was it just an instinct thing?
It was just mainly not just an instinct, but it's just because I think because I wanted to. I wanted to diversify, and I wanted to have different asset types, not just rely on one. And then just blessed to actually understand multiple asset types, because I think we tend to hear, I'm gonna put a little spin on it. People always say hone down on one thing. Starting off, yes, I 100% agree. But I tend to feel like once you understand it, you have people that can find those deals for you. Why not learn one or two others? Because now you was focusing on that one thing, you missed opportunities out on other things because you was just focusing on that one thing. So it's just a little bit different than me. I'm very good at multitasking.
Right.
So for me, it wasn't hard to still look at assisted living facilities, but oh yeah, I can still do a net lease property, or oh yeah, I can do a mixed use, or whatever that I'm looking at. But it's just ultimately knowing yourself. I would say that, if anything, you have to know yourself, because if you know you're only good at looking at only apartment buildings, because if you don't, you're gonna miss out on an opportunity or something like that, then great, focus on only, on apartment buildings. But if you know you can do, 2 or 3 asset types, I'm not saying do all 20, something like that. But if you could do 2 or 3, hey, why not? Because then now you have a higher chance of getting a deal that you really want because it's multiple asset types that people can send you or that you're looking for yourself.
Okay, I like it. All
Yep.
right, so let me ask you this then. With all the things you've done, not jumped, but you've transitioned to different things at different times.
Mm-hmm.
So this next part, I think all real estate investors, entrepreneurs run into this at some point in time. How do you
Yep.
deal with that bit of self-doubt, that second guessing yourself, if you will, when it comes to whatever you're working on in real estate, or just like say you decide you want to go build a restaurant for whatever reason? How are you dealing
Okay.
with that self-doubt as you're transitioning to these next things?
Yeah, I would say you have to know yourself.
Okay.
Right, and know what your why is. Why are you actually doing it to begin? Even though you're starting, is that why strong enough to keep you going? It should be way beyond materialistic things. My why is my family, my wife, and just having the freedom and creating the time to spend with them.
Right.
So your why should be very strong enough to carry you through. And for me, I really love real estate, man. I can honestly say that it's not even like a byproduct to get you where you're going, which yes, it is. But for me, I truly love real estate. I love everything about it. I love how you can help people. And I love that it's the number one industry that not only created 90% of the millionaires, but it's the number one industry to recover from any kind of recession, recession proof, if you think about it. Depending on what you're investing in, real estate is always there. Everyone is going to need a place to go. Everything around you is real estate. If you went to some type of school, right? High school, whatever the case may be, it's real estate. It's a commercial building. So you work in a commercial building, office space. So it just really, the foundation of it is, it's your why. You gotta have a strong enough why to get you where you're trying to go.
That's a wild breakdown. I had never thought about the
Yep.
fact that even in high school, you're involved in real estate.
Yep.
You're going to
Yep.
somebody else's building. Somebody's
Yep.
buying and paying for that building. Now, don't get me wrong. If you're in a less fortunate area, your high school's probably run down, beat down. That's unfortunately
Yep.
how the game works in the U.S. system as we speak. But I never
Yep.
really thought about it like that. That's a different way of thinking about it. How
Absolutely.
Anthony, did you know you were in love with real estate? At what point did you say, all right, I'm really, really enjoying this?
I think for me, hearing other people's stories, right? That was the first thing. I know it sounds crazy, but just hearing other people's stories of how, oh man, I went from nothing, I was coming from nothing, and I turned myself into this by investing in real estate and keeping consistent. I was like, man, I'm a true believer that I'm a really big people's person. I love going to networking events and knowing what other people is doing just because. So for me, hearing those type of stories, it was fulfilling for me. And I was like, wow, if this person can do it, it's just that the person has the knowledge. You don't have the knowledge. That's all. That's the biggest difference.
Right.
They may have been investing a little bit longer. Now you about to start investing, right? You can't compare your chapter 1 to someone's chapter 30. So, it's different chapters in different people's lives. But for me, it was just hearing the different stories, success stories that people was having, even the downfalls of, oh yeah, I did this as a landlord. I didn't like this, so I pivoted over and started doing office space. Now I love it. It's just different stories. And then for me actually doing it, I think it's different, and seeing the impact that I have helping other people has been truly an amazing feeling for me.
So let's dive into that a little bit, because I feel like that's still on theme with the cash flow. Because for you, at this point, all the work that you're doing, like we said, it's not just about money. Now it's also about the things that you're doing for community and for others. What do you feel like has been the most impactful thing that you've done so far for someone else?
I say for me, since I started real estate, and I wish this is one thing, we on the podcast. I wish I'd have listened to the wife with this one and actually documented how many people I've actually helped, not from a student side,
Right.
but actually documented, because I did a lot of transitional housing. I owned halfway houses. I owned sober living facilities. So just seeing that, how I came in, help people get their credit, back together, helping people get a job, helping people get into the next venture of their life, right? That was really fulfilling for me, and I probably helped hundreds of people. Then now when it comes to students, I'm helping students do the same thing that I did over the years. So it's really an amazing feeling, man, having people cry to you that was sleeping in a homeless shelter or in a car, and then now they get a key to even if it is a room, it's still a shelter, right?
Right.
They didn't want to be in a homeless shelter. And it's interesting now that we're speaking about this. I didn't even realize myself some years back, people, you would think we see people in the street and say, why don't they at least go to a homeless shelter? A lot of people do not like homeless shelters. I didn't know the things that go on inside of a homeless shelter. And so I started actually talking to people, which, you hear some horror stories, but, giving them the keys to an apartment, and they sharing like a shared living, a common space, and then you're seeing a grown man cry, is a different feeling. The money doesn't even compare. It's a different feeling. And then having students do the same thing is a beautiful thing.
Man, brother, hearing, and I've seen it. I've seen it, and of course, the capacity of coming back from deployment, military, and things like that, and folks being really excited to see their family. And even now, we see it on TV. But I would 100% agree with you. There's nothing like that happening to you in person, or even you being the one crying in person. There's nothing that'll change your life quicker than one of those things. At the same time, it's also always difficult when your wife is right. It's always, it's always a pain, because now you got to hear that until the cows come home, because the missus was right. So what are you going to do? Are you doing anything now as far as documenting? How are you handling that now that you realize that's something you should do, or something you wish you did do? Is that something you're going to assess and go after now?
Yes, absolutely, man. What I started doing, not necessarily like a documentation, but I'm starting to put myself out there more as far as YouTube content, going around to the facilities, talking to the residents and the staff, letting people know that it's achievable and it's possible. One facility can change your life, or one commercial deal, essentially can change your life, and letting people know that they can do it. So now I started a YouTube channel, I think like a month and a half ago or something like that, pretty recent, and letting people know, my journey. Yes, I'm not just a fund manager, but I'm actually, still speaking with people, still building connections, building rapport, and then, just documenting everything, everything I'm doing, more content.
I love it. More content.
Yeah.
The wife is still right, but more content anyway. That's awesome, man. That's fantastic. I think it's really important that you do that too, because it's different when you see someone. There's so many people who are out there who looking for someone who looks like themselves. In this particular case, they are looking for someone who's who's been through the things they've been through, that's been in the military and National Guard and done all these things, and somehow came out to be this millionaire, billionaire, who's who of who out in the street. And it's really important to be able to see that in someone else so that you can continue to inspire them. And I think they're definitely going to see that as an asset. So let's I've burned up a lot of your time, so we're going to jump into what we call the troop to task. Now, troop to task, I know you know what this is, Anthony, but for the listeners and viewers, troop to task is when someone gives a soldier, sailor, airman, Marine, whoever, a instruction to do one thing, to go from point A to point B and get that mission done. Anthony, for you, what would be the one troop to task that you'd give someone right now to get done in a positive way to get towards where you are now?
That's a very good question. So I would say the first thing I would tell someone, get a mentor. I can't stress it enough. A mentor will help you achieve everything you want to do by just listening. God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. So that means you listen more. And then from there, you implement. That's it. Like, people overcomplicate it. There's no need to do all that. Just listen. Don't speak. Just listen. They've been doing it for some while, and for some time. And then from there, you just implement.
I love it. Ladies and gentlemen, this is why we brought Anthony to talk about the way forward with Cashflow in 2023. Now, with that said, let's get into what we call the hot seat, Anthony. So I've got a game here, hot seat game. That's why we call it the hot seat. Okay. I'm not trying to get your patent. Please don't cease and desist me. All right, so I got 5 questions. Okay. First question. Now, you can pass on any of these. I've got some backups if you so choose, but I'll make these easy, clean, and simple. Who's your favorite athlete?
Allen Iverson.
Why is Allen Iverson? Well, first of all, hold on. Wait a second. First of all, I'm from 7 Cities. So shout out to Virginia. Shout out to one of the greats. But I want to know, Anthony, from you, why Allen Iverson? What made him the guy for you?
Because for me, I feel like I can relate to how he went to something and changed it up, right? It was just a kid at the moment that looked up to Michael Jordan, that no one can believe shook Michael Jordan, right? Even though, yes, Michael Jordan still had 50 that game. But he changed he changed the game with that crossover, right? So now everyone started implementing it, and then he brought swag to the NBA, and it was just a different chemistry when Allen Iverson was playing. And then of course he was just a phenomenal player overall.
Bro, when he baked Michael Jordan on national television, I about lost my mind.
I remember that day.
That mess was nuts. And you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and answer these two. So for me, there's a player by the name of Zlatan Ibrahimovic who plays soccer, football for those of the international community. The reason I love Zlatan, my man, let me tell you this. I have never seen anyone so confident constantly in my entire life. My man got moved to LA. My man put out a news article, or it was like an ad or something like that, and said, "You're welcome, LA." Like that kind of confidence. Now everybody thinks he's cocky or whatever else, but I feel like whatever you do in life, your confidence has to be top notch, because you're always going to come across people who're not going to believe in you. So until you believe in yourself, how are they going to believe in you? Like the Kevin Harts, the Rocks, the Anthony Lawsons, they weren't always where they are now. There was a time where they were a little bit lower or a little bit further on or early on in the journey. So having that confidence is amazing. And man, Zlatan, boy. Zlatan be talking cash trash too. That's one of my favorite dudes. All right, next question. All right, what first world problem do you struggle with?
Repeat that for me one more time.
Absolutely. What first world problem do you struggle with?
I would say for me, homeless veterans. The reason why I say that is because when I started this whole shared living journey, and it's something that I didn't even know. The moment it all started because I bought that first property, but the story around that, creating the business model, I was talking to a guy at the light, and he was a homeless veteran, and I was talking to him for maybe a good minute. Served 2 tours, Iraq and Afghanistan, I will never forget. And for me, I did not know when I started doing research, a lot of the homeless people that's on the street served. So for me, I feel like when we can figure out a way to help a lot of the people that help serve our country, we can do some amazing things in the world.
I would answer this question differently, but I'm not going to, because that is a phenomenal answer, brother. Like that is something that I've seen myself often and early, and it's nuts because you think, man, these are the men and women who have sacrificed time, effort, love, blood, sweat, tears. They've done all this stuff, and here we are. We can't seem to get our own back-end facility. So for another veteran to say that, that means a lot. I'm not even gonna try and answer that question differently. All right, let's hop to the next one. If you purchased your own island, what would you name it?
Oh, I never thought of something like that. Okay. If you purchase your own island, what would you name it? That's a good one, man. That's a tough one. That's a tough one. Because I want to say something like, oh man, like Lawson at the sea or something like that, but it sounds like it's like lost at the sea, but it's Lawson at the sea. Right?
Yeah, that might be tough.
That's a good question, man. I don't know. I may have to pass on now. I may have to take your
no sweat. I got you. I would name it. I'm gonna name mine Ollie Island, only because it has a ring to it. You know what I mean? It has a nice ring. So I definitely call it Ollie Island. I'm not gonna go anywhere else with that because I go left field, I'm certain. So we'll come back to that one. Matter of fact, we'll give you a replacement so that we can replace that one. All right, so next question, and we'll come back to the new one later. What would you choose to be paid if money wasn't an option?
What would you choose to be paid if money wasn't an option? Time. For me, it'd be time, because you can't get time back. So if I have all the money in the world, if I have all the time, you could do a lot of things.
That's a fact. That is an absolute fact. All right. So we got our replacement, right? I think. Matter of fact, I'm gonna give you a choice, right? I got these cards. So 1, 2, 3. What number are you going with? 1, 2, or 3?
I'm always going with the middle. Let me get 2.
All right, 2. The question is, what job would you be absolutely horrible at? What job would you be absolutely horrible at?
What job will I be absolutely horrible at? Man, data entry. As far as what people do. Oh yeah, I with loan. Let me tell you something, man. I did not know loan officers put in so much data like that, to the extent, because I'm gonna use the wife for instance. She's a commercial analyst and she does a lot of big numbers and all this other stuff. I'd be lost in the sauce, man.
I'm not.
That is not my expertise. That is not my expertise. You know, I commend anyone in that space.
Listen, I won't judge you. I would struggle with that myself. As soon as, like, I had a hard enough time with underwriting, right? I got to the point now where I just realized, and people had to tell me this. I said, listen, stick with what you do best. Stick with interacting with people. Stick with finding the deals and talking to brokers and doing that part.
Yeah.
They said, because you hate these numbers. Man, I swear to goodness, give me a sheet with all them numbers on it. I'm going to fall apart. I fall apart every time. I'm working on it. I'll get better, but it's not the focus.
But you know what?
Talk to me.
The interesting thing is I'm very good with math, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm like the old school way. I like to do underwriting still in simple notebook and pen. Mm-hmm. It took me a while. Now I'm doing it in the Excel,
right?
But I had to have an Excel built to where I understand it,
right?
Because, like, you know how people say, "Oh, you take my free Excel tool for apartment building."
Right.
I didn't know what I was looking at, man, when I first started. I'm like, this stuff looks crazy, you know. So
that's a fact.
So for me, it was just okay. I understand it, vacancy, property management, all this stuff on pen. So, and then I understood it.
So I'm going to tell you about the worst job that I could ever have. Because I actually did it. The worst job I could ever have was working in a grocery store as a cashier.
Okay.
Man, when I tell you, I've never been fired from a job that quickly in my life. One day I came in, they're like, hey, we're going to have you as a bagger from now on. I'm like, what happened? Man, turns out I was just talking so much, I lost like $75 out of the cash register. Not lost, like I gave it, like I was giving the wrong number back.
Yep. Oh my goodness.
I was like 15, 16. I was kept giving the money back, and I was like, I didn't even know I was doing it, but I did it. I had so many transactions that it adds up. Like it'd be 50 cents here, $1 here. Next thing you know, by the time I turn my register in, they're like, James, you're out of your money. You know, at the time I was just going by my first name. I didn't even use my middle name. Yeah. But they were like, hey, Jay, you're $75 short. I said, no, it can't be. There's no way, right? Like I don't know. And so my next question is always, did that come out my pocket? They said, no. All right, we cool then. All right, we out. We out. Cool, we gonna let that go. Right, it is what it is. But neither here nor there. All right, but that's mine. So, ladies and gentlemen, and Anthony, thank you for all being a part of the hot seat. Anthony, that was amazing. That was a really, really good hot seat. I enjoyed that one. So, Anthony, before we go, I do want to make sure people are able to get a hold of you. How do people reach out to you and get in contact with you?
Absolutely. So you can contact me on Instagram. I'm very tech savvy, if you want to call it that, and I'm on social media. So you can follow me on Instagram and contact me at Anthony_the investor. So it's Anthony_the investor. On Facebook, I'm just Anthony Lawson. And on LinkedIn, I'm at Anthony Lawson.
Don't forget the YouTube. Give me that YouTube. Where do they find you on YouTube?
Anthony Lawson. There you go.
My man. There we go. That's what I'm talking about.
Yep.
All right. Fantastic. Anthony, man, thank you so much for coming on. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another amazing episode. I hope you learned something. Remember, you're better than you were, but you're not half as good as you're going to be. Like, subscribe, do all that great stuff. But if nothing else, leave a comment. Let me know some questions you'd like to hear the answers from Anthony next time we got him on. All right. We'll see you later, ladies and gentlemen. Have a great day.
Thanks a lot, Alva. Thanks.